Hey, thanks for stopping by Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. As always, make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're following this on YouTube. And if you're on Rumble, make sure that you are following on Rumble so that you get email notifications when my content comes out. If you are on YouTube, like, comment, and share. Do the same on Rumble. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you got a couple of easy options to follow. Like down below, you can either go right below the video, you can subscribe on the subscribe button, or right here in the video, you can go to the little icon on the bottom of the screen and you can subscribe right inside of the video. If you're doing this on your big 65-inch plasma. What? Oh, we don't use plasma. Was it LED now? I don't know. I'm not that guy. I'm really excited today because we're gonna be announcing something, and it'll be real quick, but I have George with me today, and I'm going to bring him in and introduce him to you in just a second. But George is a vet. He's an entrepreneur, and he doesn't give up, and that's part of his life story. So we're gonna bring George in to talk about that, and he's going to tell us about what he does for a business and why he's well, he's not bivocational. He's kind of trivocational. And for those of you that don't understand what that means, just pay attention and listen. George, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, great to be here. Glad to be on.
Well, you say that now. Wait till we're done.
Absolutely.
So, George, you and I met here. Honestly, it feels like it's been a lifetime after everything you guys have been going through. Mm. But you and I met because of your relationship to Anne and her family. Can tell us a little bit about that. How do you know, and make sure people know who Anne is, and then tell us about yourself. But let's talk about Anne first.
Yeah. So if you haven't caught some of the pieces, Annie Quiner and her husband Scott were a member of our church. One of the hats I wear is pastor. And we had been supporting the family. She had been praying through some things, fighting for her husband. And the hospital had said, hey, that's 12 o'clock, high noon. We're going to unplug your husband's ventilator. And she really had no option. And so I had reached out to quite a few different people, put a post up on Facebook. They got a lot of shares, and it was picked up across the country. Yeah. And Scott was actually taken out of that hospital, flown down to Houston, but unfortunately, it was just too late. Yeah, they got there a little too late. So, but his legacy is living on, and they're doing some great work, doing some advocacy, trying to change some of the protocol measures that hospitals are using to basically kill people.
Yeah, it's Scott was a victim, not of the coof. And by the way, we refer to that particular virus as the coof because it gets missed on the algorithms.
Yeah. So
it doesn't get taken down. My stuff doesn't get taken down as much when we do that. But Scott was not a victim of the coof. Scott was a victim of coof, should we say, treatments.
Yes.
And really kind of the victim of a system that has become jaded and very self-interested. And that's how I became aware, is because a mutual friend that of ours who had shared your post, and I was immediately outraged. Just having been paying attention for the last couple of years, especially with what's been going on. I was incredibly angry at what they were doing to Anne and Scott.
It was hundreds of thousands of people that got onto that wagon with understanding and just outrage. I mean, when you have no control over the care of your loved ones just because of the coof measures.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you have stated, Scott has subsequently passed on, gone home. For those of us who come from the Christian perspective, how's Annie doing?
Annie's doing really good. She's a fighter. If you've caught any of her interviews, she's a fighter, and she doesn't quit. She doesn't give up, and she's going to take his legacy and keep moving on. We've got his funeral that's going to be coming up soon, but that's it's a homecoming for Scott. He just beat the rest of us home.
And it's hard, I think, for a lot of people. I don't think they understand when Christians can grieve at the loss of a loved one and still talk about celebrating that loved one's passing and actually have joy in their spirit and in their countenance that loved one has passed. And it's a foreign concept to the world, really. We don't have to hire professional mourners like they used to.
Yeah, there is that. And you know, when you're sure of where you're going after this life, the rest of it just is a matter of what can we do to make a difference while we're here to bring somebody else hope.
Well, when you have the chance, you know, pass on to Annie that she's in my thoughts and prayers even still to this day, and she's not out of sight, out of mind now that the turmoil has passed in that regard. And I'm still looking forward to a time where we can meet. And I would like for my viewers who maybe don't pay attention to some of the other platforms, I would like to have that opportunity to have Annie come on and kind of tell her story to the people who follow my channel, follow my show, because I think she has a very interesting perspective. And
that's for sure.
And once she's got things settled down, you tell her, you know, take her time, but let her know I'm here, and I'd love to platform her story, help as best as I can. Which also reminds me, you have to help me figure out how to get the donations to her, because I promised, and I want to be a man of my word. So I have some coffee sales proceeds I'd like to share with her. So
absolutely, and I have that solution, and I'll talk to you soon about that. So, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, because one of the things that Annie has found herself in is right in the middle of the heat of the battle, and in the heat of the battle, there's a lot of negative out there as well. So I'm trying to make sure that we protect her and the 3 kids as much as we can. So
absolutely, I'm surprised at the kind of snide, just hateful rhetoric that has come my way for taking up for her and some of the horrible things that have been said. And I can't even imagine what she's gone through, to be losing, you know, a loved one like that in a situation like that, and to know that she's received hate mail and hate messages as well as support. But
yep, absolutely.
So we mentioned that you're tri-vocational and you're a vet. So, and you're a vet in a couple of different perspectives. You've lived a hard life. And so you served active duty Army.
Active duty Army. Yep.
My fellow co-host of Veteran Nation, Mike Arthur, was a Marine, and he was a commissioned officer. So he's going to be, you know, in for it, because we're probably going to have you come on Vet Nation as well.
That'd be awesome.
And we'll have to pick on him, because you know how Marines are. But
absolutely. Duh.
I've been trying to figure out a way to write on my screen in crayon for him to get text messages, but
awesome.
So tell us a little bit about what you did in the military and what you did after, so that we can kind of talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial spirit.
Sure, absolutely. So while I was in the military, I was a 29 Fox Yankee 2, which means I was a fixed cryptographic electronics tech. Basically what it meant for me was there's basically 4 places in the world that I could work. I spent majority of my time at Coltano Automatic Switching Center in Italy. And so my duty station for some of the guys that
was rough.
It was rough. It was incredibly rough. You can't imagine, doing your PT test on the beach. So yeah, it was rough. But with that, one of the things that we do is we handle secure communications. We handle you know, anything that needs to get transferred from an embassy or anything that's happening worldwide, we handle the communications for that, at least in the Southern Europe area. And so that was kind of my duty. So kind of used to communications gear, definitely used to being able to transport anything that's classified. And so it's kind of second nature for me. After I got out, went to work. I got out in the middle of when electronics techs were all getting laid off here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. But since then, I've done a bunch of different things. But eventually, I was going through really a bad divorce and ended up doing something really kind of stupid and finding myself federally in a federal incarceration prison. And but so it kind of built a lot of passion for me to put resources around men and women that are coming out of jail, prison, addiction treatment facilities to see them succeed. And so I've been heavy in that community for a long time. I'm part of the tri-vocation is I am a licensed pastor. And so I work a lot with those that are disadvantaged and try and give them a head start. That's just where I work well. But I also launched Cybershield that comes out of kind of that military background. And Cybershield is really a company that's based around trying to keep communications secure, being able to have your conversations shielded when you want to have them shielded. If anybody was a special ops guy that might be listening, they would have probably had a briefing where they had put comms in the bag. Well, that bag was a Faraday cage, or they.
Well, now you gotta stop now because people are gonna go,
"What's a Faraday cage?
What's the Faraday cage?" And then you get talking about what they use them for today, and they're gonna ask about your tinfoil hat, and I guarantee you that this beats a tinfoil hat any day. So what's a Faraday cage?
So a Faraday cage is basically any kind of metal container or box that prevents any kind of radio waves to be able to be entered in or to come out. And so that's the simplistic version of it. So a communications guy like me would have been working within a building that was a Faraday cage.
Faraday cage, yep.
Basically, in 2-foot thick walls. But even there is what they call Faraday fabric now. It's a metal fabric. And so whenever you take those kind of fabrics and you put them into into something, right? Yep, you've got yours. And so when you put them into to this, like a cell phone cage or a cell phone box, I actually have a box made. It prevents any communications coming in or any communications coming out.
But George, you said radio, and cell phones aren't radios, right, George?
Well, technically they are.
Right.
They use a carrier wave. They use a frequency. It's just a matter of the frequency. Everything from everybody's familiar with X-rays, right? X-rays can come in and scan your body, not do much harm. 5G actually does your body a lot of harm. That's one of the things about being able to use some of these is the shielding device. But so everything from nuclear is a radio frequency. It's just extremely intense, down to just about everything has a radio frequency. So.
Right. And I only said that I wasn't just being cheeky. A lot of people don't understand that. They do not understand that when you walk around with a cell phone, it's not like the cellular network is different than a radio transmission.
It's just a different frequency.
Right. And actually, in many respects, it might have more power as far as the amount of information that it can carry and how fast it can carry, but it's actually lower power in how far it reaches. Which is why you see cell towers in so many places, is that because of the lack of the actual power of the cell network, the frequency that it's carried on, it needs far more coverage by antenna than what a radio signal would, especially, when you break it down from FM to AM or UHF, or what's ham is UHF, right? Yeah. So people, and that's what I just wish people would understand. And so he's not a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. Well, he might be, but what we have learned for the last couple of years is that all the conspiracy theorists like myself are right. So tell us a little bit. You had done a promo video about your product, kind of on a whim, sitting at a coffee shop here a couple of weeks ago, and you kind of cold interviewed actually it was a cold sale, really. kind of cold interviewed a young man in the coffee shop. And what was your talking point for that was, ever notice how your phone's always listening to you?
Yeah, well, it's kind of, I think there's nobody probably on the planet that hasn't been talking about something and had it show up in their ads, or show up on Waze, or show up in their next Google search. It just shows up in their Facebook feeds. And so having that there, it automatically, you know that there is somebody somewhere that has some artificial intelligence that's gathering all of that. It's not some guys back in the day sitting behind some stuff just beginning to take things apart and put this conversation with someone else. There's actually search bots and nanobots that are web crawlers that are gathering all of this information, and all of your shopping history and everything else. They're finding it, and it's giving that information to those that are trying to sell you whatever they're trying to sell you, or it's whoever that's wanting to listen to your conversation. And so oftentimes we miss the point that if technology can be used for good, it can also be used for bad.
Technology itself is neutral. It's what you do with it that's the problem.
Exactly. And so even like, for example, Afghanistan, we left biometric scanners and information in Afghanistan that can be used to attach to a tracking device that tracks a carrier wave that tracks and triangulates cell phone, and then uses the information to try and come together to actually, find them, to persecute them. But that technology can be used in a bad way if the intentions aren't good. It's kind of one of these things where I want to have some private conversations that I don't want everybody listening to. I don't mind the coffee shop on the corner showing up, right?
Right.
But if I'm in the doctor's office, what means that communication is secure now just because I'm in a doctor's office or in my attorney's office, or just because I'm sitting here talking with you, and maybe sometime somewhere in the future, we don't want all of our conversations listened to.
Well, and I think that this is where people go, oh, why are you so paranoid? And the issue it's not an issue of being paranoid. It's an issue of saying, for the first time in the history of the world, especially here in the United States, surveillance has never been as easy as it is right now. Oh. It's incredibly easy to surveil you without having to get a warrant, ultimately, because the tech companies provide the information.
The government would have to get a warrant, right? It's technically, yeah. But because of some of the laws that have passed, Patriot Act, and some of the terroristic things, and now it's underneath the quote of domestic terrorism, all of those things are easily accessed by enforcement if they truly need to. But when you skirt that, the private sector doesn't have to operate necessarily underneath the same parameters as the government operates. And so Google can scoot some things, and so can the coffee shop on the corner can scoot some things, and they can go around different ways. So for the government to be able to track you or to look at you, but Waze does it. How many times have you been sitting at the stoplight and you all of a sudden pops up whatever it was that you were just getting ready to look for or drive to?
Well, that doesn't happen to me.
Intelligence is real.
I don't use Waze. So I see on here for my interested fan base that you have a book online, because you don't just sell the Faraday cages, you actually do symposiums, basically.
Yeah, I do. I also consult with businesses because a couple of things that are well, one thing you can quick Google search, and you're going to find out that that a coronal mass ejection, they're talking about it all the time. Matter of fact, Elon Musk just lost 40 of his 49 satellites that he just launched because of a coronal mass ejection. And so it destroyed his satellites. And so what that does here is that also affects our power grid. It affects the satellites that are around us. But if you're a company, that means that if the power was to surge across long lines, what protection do I have to be able to get back online, or how do I have some protection around my company, even if there's an EMP? And so being able to harden or cover that EMP pulse with some backup communications gear so that you're the first person to come back online, which sure gives somebody a heavy advantage. Or even if you're a tinfoil hat prepper kind of person, you got all of your bunker going, right? You're going to want to make sure that your generator's protected and your communications gear, because that's becomes survival number one. And
right.
So
it's strange because what you're talking about has for a long time, people have said that's clearly just prepper stuff. That's clearly just tinfoil hat, covering your windows in tinfoil kind of stuff. And the reality is, and I don't think they understand this. EMP is not just something that happens when they drop the bomb. There is a very real threat of EMP, and there are people out there right now working on trying to utilize EMP as a domestic weapon. And there are government entities across the world who have, in some respects, have their hands on the technology to be able to do pinpoint EMP disruption.
Yep, absolutely.
And we're not too far away from now the threat to our grid, our infrastructure, being not hacks from terrorist groups like Anonymous and Chinese hackers and whatnot, but really is the reality that we're probably facing a future where EMPs pointed at individual cities and businesses, government buildings, and taking down communications will precede any kind of even terrorist attack if they can get their hands on this stuff. And if you just happen to be in the way when something like that's in the crosshairs, you lose all your stuff. You lose all your tech. It fries your phone. It fries the radio in your car. It fries the computer in your car. It takes it all down. And that, more than anything, will devastate a country like the United States, a nation like the United States, faster than somebody dropping a bomb or flying an airplane into a building.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we understand how vulnerable our communications is, number one, but we're such a high-tech society anymore that it's not like we're running around with some old transistor radios and tubes and stuff that we're actually kind of hardened to some of this. We are so far beyond that. Anytime we're miniaturized circuitry, it's extremely vulnerable to, imagine your phone dropping it into a pool of water. It's just like, it's going to give you alarm. Hey, got to clean the port out. But there's still accesses to all of your communications gear that if there's an electromagnetic pulse that's specific towards a specific city, or even frequency pieces that could be targeted. All of that stuff is on the table anymore that wasn't on the table before. Before, when you thought of an electromagnetic pulse, you're thinking of the big one launched over the top of the United States, and you can see all the demographics. They've done a congressional studies on those, and it takes out 3/4 of the United States, but the aftermath of that even in our society today, it doesn't take that big of a thing to cause panic within a society. Look at what we've just gone through. If the power is out for a few weeks or a month, there's a reason why President Trump hardened transformers and signed it. You know, it still takes a long time. They're not even built yet. But to knock those out takes 3 years for them to be built if they can get the plant back up to remanufacture them. That's why they harden some.
Right. Well, I've jokingly told people I'd like to get a way to design my own EMP directional weapon so that if someone's trying to fly a drone around my house, I can just point it at the drone, take it out. And like now I'm like, I don't think I should have said that.
Yeah, sometimes you got to kind of watch that. I mean, you know, I did serve in the reserves and also, and part of that was military intelligence battalion, and so there's been, even back in the day, there's jammers, right, for radio frequencies. Yep. But today's technology is so far behind anything that we ever even thought of back in my day. I'm a little older than you, but
not by much.
Technology was great.
You got a few years, and that's literally it. Just a few years on me. So you sat down after walking through all of the stuff that you've been walking through, probably 10 years Fed time isn't easy, but then you chose to go out and be a pastor. That's harder than doing Fed time. At least when you're locked up, you can get away from people. Not that George wants to get away from his flock. That's not my point. But but you're sitting at home. You don't have enough to do. You do counseling for reentry. Yeah. You co-pastor with two other people. You pastor a church, and you're like, you know what? I just don't have enough to do. I'm going to start a company, and so you start Cybershield, and now you're doing consultations. How did you, like, you didn't design the idea of a Faraday cage. Obviously, the Faraday cage has been around for actually longer than most people could even imagine. Faraday cages pretty much kind of came around about the same time that communications, apart from like smoke signals and marathon runners. You know, once communications became electronic, Faraday cage became a reality of, at least conceptually and theoretically. I mean, the name Faraday. Yeah. So you look at it, you're going, I can do this. My military experience has given me the ability to design something like this. How did you come up with this, and how do you produce them?
Well, there's other ones that are out there. It's not something that's new, that's for sure. But the reason why it came about, let me give you kind of the background piece of that, and we didn't really have a chance to talk about. But I talk about sensitive information all the time, especially when I'm working with people that have been incarcerated, gone through some serious substance abuse. Oftentimes pornography is part of that piece. And so when I would speak, I would get ads that I didn't want to see. And so I'm like, eventually I'm done with this. I'm like, okay, I got to get a Faraday cage around my phone. Surely there's something out there. And it began to snowball in the process. And snowballing in the process began the development of the case, right? And they're out there. You can Google them and you can find them. Unfortunately, most of the Faraday material is all manufactured in China. And so I don't know what that tells you, other than they're already ahead of the game as far as shielding goes, than all the manufacturers here in the United States, for sure. But having that ability to put my phone into a cage whenever I was talking about sensitive information was what I personally wanted. And then when I finally have the spot to be able to put that and to bring it to manufacture, I'm watching all of the news on high-tech theft. I'm watching all the news on CMPs, EMPs, and I'm also dealing a lot with counselors and so having the box that's big enough I don't think you've probably been on the site, but the box is big enough that I can stick probably 10 phones in here if I need to. And so having the ability to walk into a small group or to go into a doctor's office and be able to put my phone in became something because even though technically somebody might not be listening, I don't need to listen to my attorney's conversation. I don't want to listen to my personal counseling conversations or even my personal presentations on why some things are hazardous in life. And I certainly don't want the artificial intelligence putting ads back on my phone for things that I'm trying to get rid of. And so I just started kicking it around. I like the look of carbon fiber. There's something about it for me. And so Cybershield was kind of birthed out of just the necessity of keeping things off of my phone.
Right. Well, it's funny because I knew, obviously we knew we were doing this today, and it was funny that we had this scheduled because a long-term friend who predates all of the COOF stuff and all the other revelatory actions that have been taken by the state that have finally shown people that the state is not to be trusted, said today, am I the only, something to the effect of, am I the only person whose phone seems to know what they're thinking? And I'm like, it's funny. And I'm like, well, I'm glad we're doing this conversation today because I want to be able to get this processed and out for them to see, because this stuff's really important. And boy, people could say, well, you know, the old adage of, well, what are you hiding? You know, what do you have to hide? Why are you afraid? Well, it's no different than me telling people today, don't talk to cops.
Yeah.
They ask you a question, don't answer. Don't answer it. I don't care if it's a traffic stop. You know why I pulled you over? I guess you're going to have to tell me because I'm not answering that question. You know, it's not an issue of having something to hide. It's an issue of it's nobody's business but mine.
Yeah.
And so if I want to talk about going to a protest or a patriot rally or some sort of anti-state restriction overreach function of some sort, no matter where it is I'm going, I should be able to talk about that and not have to be concerned that somebody's listening in and is going to report me. And there was just a video that someone shared with me last night of in Canada, a local, I think it was might have been mounted police, a local mounted police officer, not in the fancy costumes, but showed up or it was provisional police or something, or showed up and handed them a card about how to peacefully protest after they posted something on Facebook. Now, not quite the same. If you're posting things on Facebook, you just have to realize people are going to see it. They're going to watch.
Yeah.
But the issue ultimately remains that they're watching you and they will listen and they will tap into anything they can get their grubby little swindling hands on to do that.
Well, and not only that, they're actually tracking you. We've got the best tracking devices in the world in our pockets because it triangulates so incredibly accurately. So I kind of use this as an example sometimes that, especially with what happened in Afghanistan, it makes it an easy piece. But if I had been able to get this into the hand of some of the Christians that were behind enemy lines and some of those that were that needed to escape in some form or fashion, I would have trained them on how to use a Faraday cage, how to use this, because once you slide your phone in to this, your GPS tracking goes off as well. And that means that I can go in, I can boogie out 100 miles, open up my case, make a quick phone call, slide it back in, turn it back off before that triangulation actually starts getting me tracked, and move positions. I mean, that's just military operations basics, right? If you're doing any kind of black ops work, communications is instant. You pop in, you get what you need, and you go back.
Yes.
And so the Faraday cage allows anybody, if I want to get to a location that I don't want the government or Jim Bob's pizza place following me, then, or the local guy that's doing the private investigation piece, right? And he managed to get me to download some kind of an app that actually has a tracking piece, and I gave it permissions, which everybody does. Then I slide my phone into the app. He or they can no longer track me wherever I'm going. I get where I need to go. I come back home. I open my phone up. I get my messages. I get my thing, and I send all my Facebook buddies a couple of, hey, how's it going? But in the meantime, in between point A and point B, that's nobody's business but mine at that point.
You know, parents, do not get your kids these Faraday cages to use
on the family plan.
On the family plan. Yeah.
No.
The whole reason you got the family plan was to be able to track your kids.
Yeah. So don't get one of those and hand it to them and say, okay, put your phone in the back slot. The other piece about this case, and I didn't really tell you about it, 5G has some really negative effects. As a matter of fact, if you go on your phone, there's a warning on your phone about 5G and your cell phone having to be a certain amount of feet away from your body, and it's best to use a Bluetooth. But if you were to slide your phone into the front side of the pouch in front of that lining piece and hold that towards my body, then none of the 5G radiation is actually kicking back, and I'm still receiving phone calls. I'm still receiving my texts because there's two pouches on this case. And so if I slide it in the front, the shielding is on this back side.
My phone is too big.
You got a big case on there. I got an OtterBox. I got to get the OtterBox. Yeah.
I got it in there.
Yeah. But when you slide it in the front, then it's still receiving. It's still connected to but know where I put it on my body. As long as I got the flat facing away from me, my body's not absorbing all the microwaves from the 5G. By the way, if you carry your phone in your front pocket, guys, that's a good way to end up with something that you really don't want in a place you really don't want it. But it does cause damage to our bodies, and so that's just an extra advantage.
Honestly,
of it.
Just cell phones in general have always been able to do that. People there again, it's you're putting a radio transmitter right up next to your head. It's no different than, you know, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's not people going, oh, it's, you know, like when the COOF first came out, everybody tried to tie the COOF to the 5G towers, and I'm like, no, it's people. It's a virus. It's a virus.
It's a virus.
It's a virus. Viruses don't get transmitted from 5G towers, but it's a virus. But we're not talking about whacked out weirdos seeing lizard people living underground, you know, coming up and running the White House from underground. We're literally just talking about the fact that it's radiation. It's just radiation, and it's an accepted risk. We've been doing this since cell phones came out, and Blackberries. You go back to Blackberries, you know, we've been doing this for years. That's not what we're talking about. We're not, you know, we're talking about legitimate radiation, and there are ways to protect yourself from it. Yeah. You need to be able
and part of the difference is the 5G has actually changed some of that kind of pieces, and most of the 5G technology is always on. Even if you turn things off, it's still on, and it's designed because you kind of mentioned before the inability to go over long distances. Part of 5G technology is to be able to bump between devices to extend that reach, and so it's like it's no different than all of a sudden you know that there's 150 cars piled up in the traffic jam in front of you. It's because a lot of it's all triangulated down to one particular core, but also 5G is designed to be able to be integrated into home surveillance. It's smart lights and everything else. So it's designed to continually communicate. As a matter of fact, cell phones used to be the old spy movies. The spy, he's being tracked, so he pops open his phone and he takes the battery out. Well, when's the last time you saw a battery phone So there's a reason why they do everything.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's just, and some of it is they just want to be able to track your purchasing and track your conversation so they can gear ads towards you. It's no different than the algorithm on YouTube or Rumble or something. The more you watch of a particular thing, the more they're going to bombard you with a certain type of ad or advertisement. It's what it is. The issue isn't that everything is a giant conspiracy. The issue is you have a right to some privacy. The problem is you kind of forego that if you don't take any kind of precautions for yourself. And most people don't turn their phone off, set it on the desk or on the counter and walk away from it. They keep their phone with them. I'm guilty of that.
Oh, yeah.
And how many conversations have I had with people where maybe the other person, I haven't even been thinking about it, now they're sharing something with me that they don't want everybody else to hear. And like you said, you're talking to somebody who was addicted to pornography or something, and next thing you know, after an hour counseling session, you open up your phone and there's nothing but ads for smut on your Facebook feed or whatever.
Yep.
And you're like, where's this coming from? I keep getting ads for silver singles. I'm like, who am I talking to other than other old people? So after I'm done talking to you, my phone's going to probably show me an ad for silver singles buying Cybershield. So
there you go.
So you approached me and said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about this," and you told me I could have a discount code all for me.
Yep.
So all of my fans, all 4 of you, you guys can go to George's website. The link will be in the description of this video, and obviously it's showing up right here. But you guys can go, you can order, you can take a look around, and at checkout you can enter the code that's there, MNBRR, all caps, and you'll get 10% off. And he even has a payment plan thing set up through PayPal, I see.
Yep.
And so if you decide you want to go something bigger and you want to take a little bit of time to pay it off, if you don't want to pay it all out, you can sign up for that, and he'll take your hard-earned money and protect you with a hardened case, is basically what it is. And what kind of do you have, like guarantees for people? Like, hey, if this product, you find out the product doesn't do what it says I say it'll do, can they return it?
I stand behind everything. I better, as a pastor, I better stand behind the stuff, right? And so
well, you'd like to think so, George, but have you looked at the landscape of the pastorate in the United States?
It could be, that's exactly true. But
I'd like to put one of these around Joel Osteen and Beth Moore, honestly. But anyway.
Oh, there you go. We'll just do the wrap them up package deal.
Yeah.
But one of the things, and the reason why I was actually kind of approaching you, is because when you're trying to launch a device or a product that makes it where ads and artificial intelligence can't find the information they want, guess where my algorithms go? Well, exactly. And so my web pages are hard to be found. It doesn't matter how I optimize my search engine optimization. So I use word of mouth, and I use people that are, because I'm just launching this and trying to get it out there. And so I want to support organizations and people that I believe in. And so when you stepped in with Annie, one of the things that I was like, okay, this wasn't solicited in any way, shape, or form. You just said, this is something that I can wrap my head around and I want to be able to help. And you jumped in and you did that. Those are the kind of organizations and the kind of people that I personally want to be able to help as well. And so not only do they get the 10% off, but I'm going to put some back towards Minnesota Black Robe Regiment as well, just to make sure that, not only are your fans taken care of, but your presence should be highlighted too. I get buried in algorithms, so I get it. But getting that word out that this is something that, it's not, I don't carry my phone around in it. I actually told a couple of other pastors, and when I talked to them, I said, I'll tell you what, I hope that you actually never need the stealth portion of what this offers. because that I pray that the nation never gets to that kind of a spot. But if it ever does, right, quote unquote, if it ever does, then I want you to be able to get your small group out of the way. I'd love to have Christians in China and Afghanistan to be able to not be found by government tracking pieces. So the enemy of our souls also is pretty in tune with trying to track people. But I believe that God's given us some wisdom to be able to come back the other side and some experiences to be able to come back the other side. So I really want people that, maybe it's something that you just stick in your Bible case or you stick in your prepping cage, whatever it is, right? With an extra old phone, because you'll be the first one back up. By the way, if there's an EMP and your phone actually happens to be in a Faraday cage, that phone will actually be working. Not that the satellite would be necessarily, but possible. So that's kind of what we're about, actually.
And now we have to work on a line of the old line telephones that we used to use. I know you know what I'm talking about. The wireline telephone. The ones you'd have to ring up and say, I need to talk to the captain.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you run who's gonna run the reel out across enemy lines?
The noob. So yeah, you heard George say that it's not just a 10% discount. It's I guess you want to call this my first actual sponsorship, if you would. You can call it that if you want. And he stands behind his product. He's going to back it up, and he puts his money where his mouth is. And so I would encourage everyone to check him out. And because like I said, just today on Facebook, I had somebody say, do you ever feel like your phone's listening to you? Well, yeah, it probably is. And
I guarantee you it is.
I guarantee you it is. It's a listening device, like not just for you, but for everybody who wants to listen in. George, you aren't doing this because you're planning, and I say this tongue in cheek, but you're not doing this because you're planning some sort of massive insurrection and you just want everybody to be able to hide their phones and follow you. You're literally doing this to protect people's privacy and their data.
Yeah.
Not just from like the state, but just so you can have like some peace of mind because you actually care about people.
I do care about people. I also care about in this high technology piece of life that we currently live in, there's multiple different ways to be misused. Not only is it your phone, I don't necessarily carry my phone in the back flap, but I put my credit cards in there, especially if I'm going to the mall or to the airport, because there are RFID scanners, which is what your credit cards have in them. Mm-hmm. And if you have somebody with a high-powered RFID reader, then they get a backpack, and it looks like somebody's carrying a backpack, but they're scanning for cards that they can get close to. Somebody puts their purse down really close to your purse, and the next thing you know, they've got all of your information, and you're off on the airport, and halfway to California, when you land, you don't have anything in your bank accounts. And so those are very real things.
Well, I've got news for you. I never have anything in my bank account. So,
well, there you go.
And that's the thing is that there again, people are going to hear this and go, man, that sounds like you are way out there on a limb. But like, ladies and gentlemen, this is a reality. This has been happening for a very long time. People have been talking about this for years, and they have been working on, like, there's all sorts of these little aluminum wallets that you can buy, and all of that stuff. Gimmicky, might work to some degree, but it's not the same thing as what you see with this basically this Faraday fabric. Those are just things, and if you get a powerful enough device, it's going to go right through some of those wallets, those secure wallets that should be able to put your ID and your credit cards and your debit cards and all that, whatever other card you might have. those won't protect them perfectly. And sometimes they're actually more dangerous because when it's metal, like that kind of metal, it can actually cause even more problems. So this isn't something that's new, and it's no different. It's no different than the people telling you watch out when you use a card at a gas pump, because sometimes they put scanners in those gas pump card readers. Yep, it's real. It happens. People have had that happen.
One of the newest things, well, prior to the lawlessness that we find ourselves in right now, is everybody just carjacking people. But before that, it was becoming really prominent in new car theft because it takes two people. All of your key fobs are an RFID key fob, and it holds all of your information for your car. And so most people walk into their house, they drop their keys on and hang them on the hook by the door, right? Mm-hmm. And so at night, what would happen would be somebody with it takes about $150 worth of equipment to be able to make another fob on the spot. And while somebody's transmitting all of your data from your key fob hanging on the door, the other buddy is in your car waiting for the locks to go clunk clunk so that he can jump in, step on the gas, and hit the button like because he's replicated a key fob.
Yep.
And so that's high tech car theft is one of the other pieces. It's one of the reasons why we designed kind of the middle box, is because you can put your cell phone in it, you can put your key fob, your billfold in it. Instead of keeping it by the front door, you can put it in the front door and not have to worry about your new car driving down the street when you're not in it.
And keep that in mind now. Every single one of these cars that are being made with push button start.
Yeah.
Those of us that have, ignition start with a fob that still has to activate the key, a lot more security.
Mm-hmm.
But we're getting away from that. It's no different than these vehicles that are, I think they're now mandated. Don't they have to have those backing camera systems and all of that stuff? You're not going to be able to get away from that. That stuff is coming, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it does literally make it easier for criminals to do. And we're not talking about your normal carjackers. We're not talking about the old pop the socket car thief who could break in, drop the column, and go in there and hotwire your car. They don't have to hotwire it anymore because they've got technology they can use to do that. And
well, 15-year-olds probably have more technology savvy when it comes to some of this than I do, right? And so if you give them $150 worth of equipment, they can do a lot of crazy stuff with it.
Absolutely. So I want to shift just a little bit away from that. Not that this isn't interesting, but I think we probably piqued people's interest.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at